Also, I'm eating a sandwich as we speak, so have fun cutting that shit out.
That's fine. Or maybe I won't cut it out.
Do you like that one? Look,
Yeah,
I just
that was
opened a can of Dr. Pepper.
Hey, I'll raise you this. For some reason, about 3 weeks ago, I offhandedly said we should do an anime podcast, because I think you mentioned your boyfriend was into anime.
Yeah, he's very much into anime, and the server considers him like an anime god now, because he's seen most of them.
And I thought, okay, we can do this, but I think in line with the other podcasts we do, we should make it about, like, weird and not very good things that we grew up with, rather than things people have heard of or like.
Yeah.
So, that's where I come in, because after Akira was a big success, there was a lot of anime released in the West, and we got quite a bit of it, and it was of incredibly variable quality. And what happened was, when all the video stores here started getting rid of their VHS stock in favor of DVD, I bought a lot of the tapes, because they would just have them on tables outside for like $1 somewhere.
Right.
So I thought we should talk about those.
Yeah, it's very in line with what we're doing to begin with.
Yeah, and the other thing is that quite a lot of Dark Souls actors show up in them, so that's a tenuous connection. I gave you 2 choices.
Okay.
I said we could do either Dangaioh or we could do Patlabor.
Okay.
You chose very poorly, and decided we would...
what any of them are, though.
It was a coin flip, okay, and you picked Dangaioh. Patlabor is good. Patlabor is legitimately very good. But I think Dangaioh is more kind of emblematic of what it was like at the time. It's an OVA series, right? So what OVA is, it's original video animation. And it's just a way of saying, like, direct-to-video. Like, it was made, it wasn't designed to be screened in a cinema, it wasn't designed to be on television. You would just send away and you would get a tape. So, Dangaioh is... Yeah, it's of that time, where it's like, this is just this weird thing. A lot of money has been thrown at it. It's extremely high-quality animation. There's a lot of talented people working on it. But it's also a giant piece of shit. Okay, so what I sent you was an anime that you can find on YouTube, but I specifically sent you my copy, which is ripped directly from the VHS.
Right.
So it has all the VHS trailers at the start. You want to talk about the amazing trailers that you saw?
I don't know. They were pretty amazing. They might be too amazing to talk about, but...
It started with the very memorable Manga UK opening that was on almost all of their tapes. Which is it's a montage of random scenes, mostly from Akira, accompanied by a piece of music that goes like this.
Yeah. Oh, and the second preview
Yep.
was The Guyver.
Yeah, The Guyver was weirdly successful.
Mm-hmm.
And there are 2 live-action American Guyver movies that were made.
Lol.
The second one has the guy who's the voice of Solid Snake in it.
Oh, snap!
Yep.
We need to watch that.
We can. I think I have it somewhere.
Of course you do.
And there was also the trailer for Cyber City Oedo, which is a cyberpunk cop series starring the guy who's the voice of Solaire.
Solaire! Oh, we gotta watch that.
Get lost. You wouldn't recognize a goddamn vampire if one jumped up and bit you on the end of your fucking dick.
The defining moment of this tape is that you didn't realize it had started. Because it's so awkwardly edited and abrupt that there's no beginning, it just appears, and you thought it was a trailer for, like, the first couple of minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was just a series of scenes that weren't connected to each other.
No.
And then you realize, no, that's actually supposed to be the plot. So, what were your initial impressions of Dangaioh?
Okay, my initial impression was like, wow, this trailer is really long. And then when it went on for like a good 7 minutes, I was like, I guess this is the anime Richie's talking about.
And then you just get this like really cheap-looking on-screen text that just says prologue.
Yeah. And then, but the worst part is there's a narrator talking over, so I thought this was like a trailer narrator, you know?
Well, it kind of is. Because I'll now reveal kind of why Dangaioh doesn't make sense to you.
Okay.
So, Dangaioh was originally released as 3 different tapes.
Oh.
And the version we're watching, Manga UK decided they would compress all 3 tapes into one tape that...
Well, it makes sense now, because I did feel like I was watching like a sequel at some point, and I'm
so
like, where's
it
the
makes
rest?
almost no sense. And characters appear and disappear at random, and a narrator tries to fill holes in the plot and fails miserably.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the premise of Dangaioh is that there's these 4 people who wake up with amnesia on a space station. And it turns out that they were abducted and brainwashed and have been made into what the show is calling espers. So, to explain what esper means, this was a popular word in Japanese stuff in the 80s and 90s. And the idea is it's someone with psychic powers has ESP, so an ESP-er is someone with psychic powers. So that's where esper comes from.
Oh, clever.
It opens with some excellent exposition.
I'm Mia Alice. I've got a name. Huh? I've lost all my memories somehow.
I noticed that trend throughout.
Yeah, yes.
I noticed that trend throughout the series where, like, everyone seems to want to explain their motivations behind what they're doing in detail.
Okay, so the characters meet up. There is Mia, who is the one who lost all her memory somehow.
Yeah.
There's a guy called Roll Cran, who has no personality at all. There's a younger girl called Lamba Nom, who cries and shoots lasers when she cries. Yeah. And then there's the MVP of the series, Pi Thunder.
My name's Pi Thunder. Now there are 4 of us.
Yeah.
Who is described as humanoid female by the narrator, but I have the VHS case, and on the back it lists her species as sexy humanoid.
Well, that described her pretty accurately.
They're working for a weird, we're not sure what he is, character called Dr. Tarzan, who appears to be some form of elf.
Does he?
And, what do you think he's supposed to be?
I thought he was just weird.
I don't know. And he's got a pet, like, gremlin.
Yeah.
That looks like a pig with a beard that sits on his shoulder and is never commented on.
That was my favorite character of the entire show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, in true Manga UK fashion, Tarzan begins explaining how he created them. And then during the explanation, Mia has a flashback. That she
like drifts off.
She has a flashback to events where people are talking, but then she starts narrating over the people talking while Tarzan is also explaining something.
Mia found she was troubled by memories of an earlier time. A time before Dr. Tarzan and his psionic powers.
My parents, I have a family.
Unaware of why Tarzan wanted to...
And it all refers back to a strand of the plot that, apart from this scene, is completely excised. And then they basically say, I guess we should escape, and they do.
Yeah, so at this point I'm thinking, I guess the scientist is a bad guy because they're escaping, right?
Well, they have a very odd relationship with Dr. Tarzan because he's portrayed as a kind of goofy sort of father figure to them. But the entire reason they know Dr. Tarzan is that he abducted them and brainwashed them.
Yeah. It was a little confusing.
You promised you'd take me and roll back to visit our home planets. Remember that one, huh?
Well, I was going to, but...
I want to go home, and I would too if it wasn't for the fact that you've been and gone and erased our memories so I can't even remember it.
There's a really awkward sequence later on where they find someone with amnesia and they say, Dr. Tarzan will help you, and it's like, no, he's the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Part of the reason this is so confusing is that they cut out all the stuff about who Dr. Tarzan is. So the idea is, in the original, that Dr. Tarzan is working for the villain. And the villain kind of made him abduct them and turn them into, like, brainwashed warriors for him.
Oh. Well, what you say now, it makes sense. Because he was portrayed as, like, a villain or something in the first 10 minutes. But then it's like he's chill and he's like, I love you guys. And they're like, oh. And it's like, oh, okay.
Okay, so the villain of the series is never fucking explained in any detail because they cut so much of it out. He is a guy called Captain Garimoth.
Right.
Who is literally a severed head floating in a sphere in the stomach of a large humanoid exoskeleton, kind of like Krang from Ninja Turtles.
That's what I thought too, yeah.
Yeah. So this is the first Dark Souls actor appearance in this series.
Oh?
So he is voiced by Sean Barrett, who is Andre.
So, General Gatira, your people would appear to have failed in their attempt to destroy the Dangaioh team.
Sen's fortress is an old proving grounds built by the ancient gods.
Andre!
Yep. Sean Barrett does a lot of these things. So you'll hear Captain Garimoth's voice like as every tough guy in everything we talk about.
That's awesome.
One of the things that's completely skipped over in the because it's edited so much is that Captain Garimoth is Pai's father.
Is whose father?
Pai, the sexy humanoid.
Oh, okay. Really?
Yeah. That it's really, really awkwardly alluded to for like one line, and then they just drop it because it's so horribly compressed.
Meanwhile, the Espers found out more about their pasts.
Father, tell me, why?
So basically...
Right. No, they have it there. No, you're right.
Yeah.
That's why I was also confused.
Yeah. It's like one scene that is itself a compilation of like 8 scenes edited really quickly together.
Yeah, I have a note here that says one of them has a father. Confused.
Yeah, so that was Pai's entire character development, and they basically removed it.
Okay.
So from this point onward, Pai remains the best character. But only because her whole role is to just stand outside the conversations and complain about everyone.
Yeah, and she tells people to shut up.
He said I'd been a part of that planet's resistance movement.
Then you've got all the more reason to get off your backside and fight him, hadn't you? Pie! Shut up, Mia. You're always too much of a wishy-washy, bleeding-heart liberal.
I love her.
She's like a Shakespearean sort of thing. She's like commenting on the action. Did you think Andre of Astora did a good job voicing Captain Garimoth?
I think he did an excellent job. I guess... So Captain Garimoth is Pai's father,
Captain Garimoth is Pai's father, yeah.
So there's a lot of complex stuff going on there, too.
They kind of allude to it. Like, from what I understand, in the unedited version, he gets Pai to turn against them.
Oh.
But then she joins them again anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But in the version that we have, there's just like one scene where the narrator's like, and then some things happened. And you see Pai talking to a floating head in a jar. And then you see her pointing a sword at Roll. And then...
Oh, yeah!
And then Mia and Lambda just show up in a jet, and then they all leave together.
No, but they do... Somebody, I don't know if it's a narrator, or somebody says, like, oh, he's her father, she's his daughter. Like, it's kind of tossed out there.
Yeah,
it's
like Speed Racer and Racer X.
What's up with them?
Racer X was secretly Speed Racer's older brother. And every time Racer X appeared in the show at all, the narrator would go, Speed Racer has no idea that Racer X is secretly his older brother. Just like every single scene. In case you'd never seen the show before. It's a bit like that. Only... At least Speed Racer had the excuse that you might have just tuned into an episode of Speed Racer and never seen it before and needed to be recapped. This is like one self-contained movie that you're supposed to watch from beginning to end. But they still have to rely on like, oh, by the way, here's some backstory, okay.
I like how, but I appreciate, the narrator was trying to tell the backstory,
Yeah.
but everyone else helped.
Yeah, it's exposition central. So at this point, you're probably wondering, like, what's Dangaioh supposed to be?
Yes, tell us.
Dangaioh... Well, it's interesting that you ask. Dangaioh is supposed to... It's a robot that is made out of these 4 spaceships that combine together, kind of like Voltron.
Yeah.
But because this is so butchered... This is kind of the issue with it, that, like, it's called Dangaioh. Dangaioh is the name of this robot that's supposed to be the ultimate weapon and have, like, psychic powers and stuff. But in order to cram the plot into 70 minutes, they have cut out basically everything it actually did. And it's just characters explaining the plot to each other.
Yeah.
So at this point, it introduces the guy who is kind of the villain, who is a guy called Gilberg. Gilberg has one eye. And later on in the movie, he blames Dangaioh for losing his eye.
Well, I was under the impression that he poked out his own eye.
He does.
So can he take responsibility for his own actions?
At this point, we finally get the intro. Which is 20 minutes into the tape and 12 minutes into the actual feature.
Yeah.
So they now have an hour to do the rest of the series.
And by this point, I was sure that I wasn't watching a trailer.
So the second, I guess, arc or act or whatever because this movie has no structure at all. It's like people talk about movies having like 3-act structures. This has 3 things that happen, but they're not in any way connected.
No.
It's just 3 things in order. So the second thing that happens is that they're on a frozen forest planet.
Right, yeah.
And
at least one of them I remember is wearing this really cute leg warmers, so I was like, oh, that's cute.
It's very 80s. So they're attacked by 3 people, and the leader of the 3 reveals that Lambda used to be a princess, and that she was her servant.
But I thought she attacked her, and then later the girl remembered that this was her servant.
Her servant pretends to not recognize her.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
This is supposed to be the twist, but then because Pi is psychic, she can read her thoughts. So then Pi, with her psychic powers, realizes that the servant hasn't been brainwashed.
Mm-hmm.
She just really, really hates Lambda.
Yeah.
And is pretending to be brainwashed.
Right, yeah.
So, like, I remember when we were talking about Final Fantasy X having to have all the animation, like, they had to match the lip flaps.
Yeah.
When people were talking, they couldn't redo the animation. This leads to an amazing line from Pi. Where in order to match the animation, she says,
If that woman's been brainwashed by Captain Garama, then I'm a sugar-frosted donut. With cream.
That was the best thing in the entire movie. Do they kill the servant in the second thing?
I think they do. She's in, like, a robot beetle.
Uh-huh. But,
like,
yeah,
we can't remember this thing that we saw, like...
Yesterday.
I saw it yesterday.
Yeah. What if your memory gets erased after you watch this anime?
Well, I think that's what's happened. Because I don't remember any... I watched it at the time. I watched it a couple of times since then, and I watched it yesterday. And I took notes, and I still don't remember anything that happened in it, because it's so completely disjointed.
But I like how, the girl asks her servant, like, why do you want to kill me? And the servant's like, 'cause you're a nauseating brat.
Then why would you try to hurt me and my friends?
Because you're the most nauseating little brat in the universe.
Yep, that is her... Well, as is helpfully explained.
Oh yeah, and then another character tries to explain it.
She felt betrayed by your royal family for having allowed this to happen. In time, this sense of betrayal led to resentment. And from this resentment, she bred the bastard son of hate. Revenge!
I think that's like, that should be like a classic line you could use in everyday life. Like,
the whirligig
from
of
this
time
was-
brings forth its revenges is another one. There's no one credited for writing this script. Okay, so this is the end of the second thing, and because this whole thing is horribly edited, it just, again, abruptly cuts to what would have been the opening of the third thing, complete with, like, a theme song playing. So we're now in the third thing,
Yeah.
which is about the incredibly memorable character Roll Cran. And how, before he had amnesia, he was fighting the people that he's fighting now.
It was very confusing, because he's on the planet, right? And then there are people who are mad at him, but then there are other people who show up who are mad at everyone.
Okay.
And then there's a fight?
So what happens is, he appears on the planet, and then there's a guy who is... Like, Captain Garamoth's forces are invading this planet. Roll Cran lands there, and then they form Dangaioh and fight off Captain Garamoth. And then people are like, oh, Roll Cran, I recognize you. And he's like, wait, this is my past. So they reveal that before he was fighting Captain Garamoth, he was a guy who fought Captain Garamoth.
You already know Roll was once part of the resistance, fighting to save the Tija from the clutches of Garamoth. I'm afraid not everyone was as loyal to the cause as him.
And the thing is, they try to make it seem like he was like a bad guy.
Did they? Was he?
Well, I think what's happened is, I think the idea is that the people tell him that he was a traitor, but that's a lie, and that he was actually a really cool guy.
Ah.
So again, like, there's just nothing. Oh, and the mystifying character who's introduced, like, presented as an antagonist in part 3. And his only character trait is he sounds like he's drunk.
Oh my god, I forgot about that. Yeah, I wanted to tell you about him. There's a character that suddenly is fucking drunk, and it's amazing.
Resistance forces! This planet is now under the protection of Captain Garamoth.
I told you the little piglet was my favorite. This is my other favorite. It's just like, I don't care. I'm not paid enough to do this. I don't care. I don't want to be here. And it's just like, I feel like he represents us, every day when we have, like, responsibilities. We have to go to work. We have to, like, do the laundry, chores, whatever, school. And you're just like, oh, I don't feel like it today.
Yeah, he just cannot be bothered.
He's the personification of all that, and I really appreciate it. Yeah, exactly.
And then at some point, Pi tells off Roll for getting electrocuted.
You could have got us damn well killed. I mean, first you let him electrocute us, and then you just sit on top of a tower block like you're waiting for next year.
Cementing her status as the only good character in this whole show. So, Roll is then befriended by someone who's really obviously Gilberg in a mask.
Yeah, that was also confusing.
It's just the exact same model, with a different head, that is like a really awkward, gigantic metal mask that just covers his face. But like the same voice actor and the same mannerisms. And I have no idea if the audience is supposed to realize that or not. It's extremely poorly done.
But you see, at that point, I thought, oh, maybe the bad guy switched sides, and that's the thing? Maybe he's a good...
Oh, no, and there's the part before that where they reveal that Gilberg's alive. And it's and these two, like, henchmen talking about Gilberg, and one of them is like... I don't want to tell you how to do your job here.
General Datira, is it wise to trust such an important job to Gilberg, whose obsession with revenge against Dangaioh is insane?
Oh yeah, and at some point I don't know when that was, the bad guys were talking to each other in their base, and like one of them goes...
However, I'm given to understand your actions led to the blowing up of General Datira.
Sorry.
It's so lazy, it almost becomes natural sounding.
Yeah. And I feel it's also honest.
Yeah.
At times. Like when the princess is like, why do you want to kill me? Well, because you're a nauseating brat.
Yeah.
That's, that's honest.
It's to the point.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, like, why do you hate your father? Because he makes me pilot that thing. This is just to the point. You're a nauseating brat, so I'm going to murder you for no reason. Also, I was pretending to be brainwashed.
Yeah.
It's like that combined with this thing about, the whirligig of time brings forth its revenges. In time, resentment birthed the bastard son of hate. Revenge! And then the guy who's obviously Gilbert takes his helmet off.
Yeah.
Gilbert, it's not possible. How did you ever survive?
Yeah.
It's like he's presented as though he's this well-known villain who's been recurring in the series since the beginning. But really, he has like 10 seconds of screen time. And then 45 minutes later, he shows up again in a mask.
Well, that whole thing was weird where he kidnaps the good guy, right?
Yeah.
And then calls the three girls being like, hey, I have the guy, so one of them has to go save him?
I think one of the issues with this in general, and the way it's edited makes it worse, is that they can't kind of settle on who the protagonist is supposed to be. Like, the idea is Mia's the team leader, and she has amnesia because she used to just be like an ordinary person on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
But then they cut out almost all of that. And I think the dub tries to make Roll into the main character. But Roll has no personality, and he has no drive. He just basically tags along and looks sad. They make a whole point about how he has incredible psychic powers, but they're hampered by low self-esteem. Like, maybe don't brainwash him.
Yeah, but the whole final thing with the kidnapping and the bad guy being like, hey, you girl, come here and come alone, and don't bring guns and don't bring anyone. What I envisioned is it's like, oh, it's gonna look like she goes alone, but then, like, her friends are gonna be with her and everybody's there and it's gonna be like this cheesy moment. But, I like that, like, and friendship wins. And that turns out, like, no, she went alone and her friends didn't go with her.
I also like how he specifies don't bring guns to someone who has psychic powers and can just kill you with their mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, like, he delivered... That speech was so, like, weird and creepy when he's like...
You've cost me my eye, my body, and some might say my sanity. Now you might expect me to be quite pissed about it. Well, frankly, I am, but that's not why I'm hurting you now. No, I just enjoy torturing young girls. I know it's sick, but everyone needs a hobby.
It's like everyone needs a hobby.
Yeah. You might expect me to be pissed about that. Like, yeah. So then they form Dangaioh and have a space battle with Gilbert.
Right.
In which Dr. Tarzan, the wacky brainwashing grandpa, comes back. And he saves them all because even though he abducted and brainwashed children, he's a good guy underneath it all.
Yeah. Yeah, he saves them all by sacrificing.
He sacrifices himself, but it's very moving because just before he sacrifices himself, he screams, "Oh, I'm fucked!"
Oh, yeah.
I think we need to take a minute to talk about the profanity in these.
Oh, that hit, like, I found that weird because I thought this was like a movie for kids, but then they started swearing, but a lot.
You don't fool us, you imperialist piece of shit! Captain Gareth can stuff his protection up his ass and fuck off while he's at it!
Yeah.
So, this is like in sort of the 80th percentile of gratuitous swearing for these tapes. So, this is entirely a theory of mine, but I think it holds up.
Okay.
They were desperately trying to get these tapes the highest rating possible, so it would be not for kids. But because the violence is mostly just animated and things exploding,
yeah,
they couldn't get it up just on the violence. So they had to make the characters say fuck every 10 seconds.
It was like, yeah, it was. And also in situations where it didn't seem like it should be said.
Yeah, this is like how much you would swear and be rude to people if this were happening in real life.
Yeah, I agree.
Whereas, like, Cyber City Oedo is how much you would swear at people if you were, like, 13. So then, I guess that's the end of the third thing, and there's no resolution to anything.
Yeah.
Basically, they're going to die, and then Tarzan sacrifices himself, and a glowing green beam saves them all. And then Gilbert announces, so, they had a warp beam.
Yes.
And then again, it doesn't even end. It's just like, Gilbert is still alive, and the Dangaioh team is still hanging around. And it ends on what looks like a setup for a sequel, but there wasn't one.
So, Dangaioh, the game's not over yet. You may have been lucky this time, but I only have to be lucky once.
So, that was Dangaioh. It was 3 things that happened, in order. There was no plot. There was no character development. And... what do you think of Dangaioh?
I think it's amazing and I highly recommend it. It's like an experience. Everybody needs to watch it.
It's tiring. That's how I would describe it.
I disagree.
Yeah.
I feel it's more like it's confusing, but at the same time, the absurdity and the dialogue make up for it.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, where else are you gonna see like a bad guy flying away from the fight being like, bye-bye, fuckers?
So, I just want to quickly talk about, like, some of the people involved in Dangaioh.
Okay.
Because this may shock you, but there's quite a lot of talented people behind the scenes of this. So, the mecha design was by a very famous designer called Shoji Kawamori, who is probably best known for designing the transforming jets in Robotech/Macross.
Oh, really?
And he also designed a lot of the, what were called Diaclone toys, which were transforming robots, that later got moved to the US as Transformers. So he designed the toys that Transformers were a rebranded version of. So he is the guy who designed Optimus Prime.
Nice. So what was he doing with this cartoon?
Well, this is early in his career.
This is his, like, practice run?
He was a very, very prolific guy. He's worked on a lot of things. Of wildly varying quality. And he's working on a game coming out for the Switch called Demon X Machina. That looks like it's going to fill the Armored Core void if From don't make Armored Core 6.
Oh.
Also, another guy who worked on this is I guess slightly less famous but also more infamous director/designer called Masami Obari. He did a lot of mecha stuff. He made an anime called Gravion. He was the character designer on this. This is one of his first jobs. He would have been only 20 or 21 when he did this. So his designs are kind of a little bit, they're not what he would eventually do. So I'm now going to send you a picture of what Masami Obari's design style would eventually evolve into.
Okay.
Okay, just waiting for this to open.
Okay, damn. I have no words.
And one of the other animators/designers who worked on this was Koichi Ohara, who he is, again, a pretty prolific guy, but he's best known for helming a movie that we're going to eventually have to watch called MD Geist, which we were talking about Akira before, so right after Akira, people were kind of anime crazy and would watch anything. Yeah. So this company called US Manga Corps licensed this absolute piece of shit called MD Geist and released it. And because people were just watching anime, it became incredibly successful.
Oh my god!
the people who made MD Geist didn't understand why it was successful, and thought that, oh, there's something about MD Geist that really resonates with a Western audience. And that he was like this beloved character. So, the US Manga Call logo is literally MD Geist. He became their mascot.
Oh.
And they were able to, partially with Western backing, fund MD Geist 2.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
Which is even worse.
Oh god.
And one of the animators who worked on it is Hideki Anno, who would later be most famous for helming Evangelion.
Oh.
But at this point, he was just one of the animators.
Okay.
Okay, I searched online to find Dangaioh fan sites. There was one, and it's not online anymore. But I was able to recover it from the Internet Archive. Here is how a Dangaioh fan site describes Dangaioh. The plot is passable. So it goes into a list. The site itself is basically this anime sucks butt, and it goes into a list of reasons why Dangaioh is kind of interesting, which basically rest on it has good visual design and the animation is of a high quality. And both those things are true. It has an extremely interesting kind of biomechanical aesthetic to the aliens in it. The designs themselves are extremely memorable. There's a lot of stuff a lot of the weirder stuff's actually cut out of the version that we saw, but there's like huge sort of flying fish at one point and like stingrays going through space and things. It's all really weird looking.
I saw one stingray go through space.
Oh, okay, good, yeah.
But I didn't understand why.
And that's that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
The character design is pretty good, I think.
I noticed everyone had very strong chins.
Okay, but this Dangaioh website, right? Because it's being even-handed, it also has reasons Dangaioh is bad.
Aww.
Okay? Keep in mind, this is a fan site.
Okay.
The plot is unoriginal, disjointed, and tedious. There is no character development. And my favourite is, there's a lot of uninspired combat and also not enough combat.
Yeah.
It's like terrible food, but such small portions.
What happens to the little pig thing with the beard?
I don't know, because it just disappears from, like, the story at one point. And I'm glad it doesn't die with Dr. Tarzan.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it...
Can we find merchandise of it or drawings of it? What is it called?
I don't know what the hell to do with, like, what does Dangaioh merchandise even exist? I'm gonna have to check.
See.
Yeah, I'm reading a review of the Dangaioh Revoltech figure, and it says that this is, to their knowledge, the only Dangaioh merchandise that actually exists. I'm reading this review, like, of all these anime in the back of this old game magazine. Dangaioh gets an 8 out of 10, Urusei Yatsura gets a 7.
What's that?
It's a lot better than this.
Well, that's subjective, Richie.
In this case, it's not. It says that Dangaioh is very similar to Macross, but the human relationships are less stated. I think this is giving it a bit too much credit because it claims there are human relationships in it at all. Rather than just, like, 3 people wandering around making terrible decisions while Pi calls them idiots.
Yeah. That's good. That's a good summary of the series.
I feel like if it had just been Pi, she would have, like, beaten Captain Garrymoth in episode 1.
Oh, yeah.
The problem is she keeps being dragged down by these other people who keep getting captured and crying and...
Yeah.
The same magazine gave Ghost in the Shell a 7. So, Ghost in the Shell objectively worse than Dangaioh.
Well, to be fair, when I watched the Ghost of the Shell, like, the anime, the old one...
The
movie, not the series. Yeah. I had no idea what was going on.
But in that, it's like, that's because it's this ambiguous kind of, like, meditation on the nature of the cell. This just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but also I was like 10. So, as basically, I remember Ghost of the Shell.
Yep.
From when I saw it 20 years ago. And in my head, it makes as much sense as Dangaioh. So I can see why, objectively, it's
true, it's true.
To people like me. Because all I remember from Ghost of the Shell is like, oh, it's a really pretty cartoon, but I'm so confused. What's going on? Yeah.
I think Ghost in the Shell is too popular for us to do.
Oh, for sure.
But, like, the guy who made Ghost in the Shell also made a bunch of really weird live-action shit. We can talk about that.
Yeah.
Well, that's 2 hours of Dangaioh.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any concluding thoughts on Dangaioh?
It was a really, really good psychological space thriller. I highly recommend it. Has a lot of complex characters. Very deep plot. You might need to think about it after you watch it to figure it out.
It's so complicated that, like, we don't understand it.
Yeah. But it's good. It's good because you know how Dark Souls and Bloodborne has complicated plots? So we're used to that.
And we understand Dangaioh less than that. So obviously it's even better.
Exactly. I was just wondering, if I were to give Dangaioh to Frumpt, would he eat it?
Yeah, but you get like 1 soul, I think. So I suspect this will be about 20 minutes long.